Hey folks, today I'm going to go ahead and cover the disassembly of the FNS 40. This weapon is actually really easy to take down. Not a whole lot to it. It's fairly similar to a lot of other striker fire weapons. Go ahead and get started. First thing I like to do is make sure the weapon is free of ammunition. Also going to check to make sure that it is safe and clear, which it is. And go ahead and send the slide home. And the first thing to do to take it down is bring the slide back and hold that quarter moon right over this tab here, and when it's there, I'm gonna swing this tab down like so. And from there we can go ahead and pull the trigger and the slide comes right off. Now as far as the polymer frame, not really a whole lot left to do on this. As far as breakdown goes, you can pretty much clean up the top end or with a brush, solvent, whatever, and just keep it clean that way. Hit it with some air. It'll be just fine. You don't need to really break this down any further. Now for the slide, we're going to go start off by taking the spring out, and you're going to do that by pushing it forward and up. Doesn't take a whole lot. Spring comes right out. And then the barrel, and all you do for this is lift it up just a little bit, run it forward, and out it goes. And now you have the spring, the barrel, the slide, and the polymer frame. Now, if you really want to be adventurous and break this thing down even further to clean the firing pin and get in all kinds of trouble, all you really need to do that is a pen or some little sharp object. And to start that off, you'll find this little tab right here that the spring sits on. And what you do is you push down on that tab and slowly lift up that back plate. See how that back plate moves? So you'll push down on that little spring tab, back plate will come up, and this is where you kind of have to be careful. As this back plate is coming up, that spring wants to shoot right out. So what I like to do is I'll pull it up and I'll just try to block it with my finger at the same time and actually catch it, just like so, and the spring comes right out. So it's a spring and a little plastic tab. Go ahead and set that aside. Now, a firing pin can come out, and it kind of works together with this little square mechanism here. And this little mechanism is what causes the firing pin to go forward. When you pull the trigger, there's a little tab here that'll push this little mechanism down, sending the firing pin forward. So when this firing pin starts to back out, there's some little grooves in here where these two are lined up together, where you kind of have to work it. Oh, there it goes. And firing pin comes right out, like so. And there's a little bit more to that. So the part that came out was this little block, and this spring sits right in there. And when you put it all back together, the solid piece goes to the inboard side, and the spring goes to the outboard side, and that's how it'll sit. And now we have a little spring in here that sits right in front of the firing pin, just like this, and that's how that sits together. Now, to take this firing pin apart, see this little pin that's sticking out? That little pin right there will come out, and then there's a little there's like a little button that this spring, the one that we pulled out initially, sits right up against, and that's what that little pin holds in. So you just turn it upside down, and there's that little button, and this little button has a hole in it. There's a hole in the firing pin, and it's for that little pin right there, that little guy. So if we were to line it all up, So little weak spring first goes on the firing pin. There's our little button with the flat side facing to the back, and then we have our spring and our little tab and our back plate, and that's how it sits in the slide. So yeah, now it's all all apart. You can clean all up in there if you wanted to, and, clean all the firing pin components. That's pretty much the complete disassembly, at least as far as I ever like to take it. So now the fun part is putting it all back together. And usually I'll start off with the firing pin, because that's the part that is the funnest. And here's that little groove right here that I was talking about, where these two pieces need to work together when you take it apart or put it together. These two will kind of, work together in there. And fortunately today it all came out in one piece and I didn't really have to mess with it. But putting it back together, kind of have to mess with it. So, alright, with no further ado, I'm going to go ahead and put this little button back in and try to line it up with our little slot here. And usually what I do is I'll stick this in there, put the big spring and back into the firing pin and push it forward, and voila, it lines up. Never done line up, take it back out, do it again. And now we can put our little pin into that hole. Probably can't see it very well, but there it is, it's in there. I'm gonna put that sideways. I also want to point out that in here, in the slide, there's also a groove where that little pin sits. So only goes in one way. It's kind of idiot-proof that way. And so here we go. Now weak spring goes in front of the firing pin, and all this will get fed into our little chamber in here. And what I like to do, that way this pin don't fall out, is I'll get it lined up and then I'll turn the slide. Instead of turning the firing pin, I'll turn the slide to where it will go in. Now everything will just sit nice and cozy, won't give me any problems, and I can slide that all the way forward. Now, as we were talking about before, flat side goes inboard, and the groove part where the spring sits for this mechanism, the spring will always go outboard, the flat part will go inboard, and in it goes. Everything's locked in nice and easy, and we'll hold that just like it is. Spring and little tab will go into the back side of the firing pin, and like we did before, we're going to hold that black tab in and at the same time work our back plate in with a little bit of magic, and hopefully it'll all come together without flying apart on me. Good little trick I need to use. Right about there. And tab should go in. Come on. There we go. Just like so. You can see it. Tab is there. Back plate's here. And to finish it off, boop, all done. So now we can actually function check the operation of this firing mechanism. And what we'll do is we'll pull the firing pin back, and then we could put our finger on the front here, and we should feel this firing pin hit our finger when I push this mechanism down. There it goes. Let me do it again. And we know our slide is back together and working properly. Alright, now we'll go ahead and finish putting it back together. Bolt goes in first. We'll do it in reverse order. So slide it in its slot there, let it drop down, push it back to where it drops in. Then we're going to put our spring in. Button goes to the front in its little slot there. Push it forward and down this time. And now we shall put our slide back on our polymer frame. And just like in reverse order, we're going to line that slide up with this tab, and this time flip the tab to the back. Just like so. Now it's locked in. Last thing to do is do a function check. Make sure there's no ammunition. And what we do is pull the trigger, rack the slide, just like if you just fired it, and slowly release the trigger until it hits that trigger reset. Go ahead and pull it again, and our function check of this firearm is complete. We can sit here and confidently say that I think the firearm will work. And all you got to do now is set it back into your configuration of choice, and the weapon is back in service. Hope you enjoyed that. I hope it helps. Thanks for watching.